So, Lee, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Tom. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And the Buffkin Baker team.
Um, and so, Lee, remote employees often report feeling disconnected from company culture. What types of virtual or hybrid events have you found that are most effective at fostering authentic connection and engagement across distributed teams?
Yeah, good question. And one that is very closely correlated to one of the questions that we get the most, which is what's the most, popular experiences that we have at Confetti. So look, I think that there's an easy response to this, and there's a little bit more of a complicated response. And I often say that these, fun events and the things that we do at Confetti, in and many of the things that we're known for, that doesn't fix toxic, culture. Like
Right,
culture
right.
is a lot of things. It's not just our parties, it's not just our policies, but it's really how we show up for each other every day at work. And what we've learned is that authentic connection really thrives through a mix of what we call like these micro moments, these like everyday moments that, where you give feedback to one another, how you start a meeting with one another, those elements, but then also like scheduled, intentional, often, larger cultural moments like what you regularly think of like your company holiday party or
Right.
celebrating your anniversary. So at Confetti, we've facilitated over 50,000 events and
Wow.
team gatherings. So yeah, it's quite a big
Huge number.
data point to consider. Um, and we've seen that the most effective approach isn't just these big annual events, but it's really creating that consistent cultural touch points throughout the year, and even more purposefully, like leaning into those structured, like purposeful interactions that are natural and human. And it's why we also created a whole new suite of our business called the Engagement Suite.
Okay.
And so when it comes to bigger moments, it's about taking time to appreciate those people, to like, set aside work, ideally just like laugh and have fun together, right? Like
Hmm.
that is what we're seeing creates like the most authentic connection. And that's why our most like popular activities are like escape rooms and like coworker clash, which is kind of like a cousin of like a family feud style event, and like mixology classes, and then also incorporating those little touch points in day to days, which is what the engagement suite does, really helping foster that element.
Great. Yeah, that's really interesting. And obviously, it's become more important, in the last 4 or 5 years, as companies first went fully remote, and then, well, some companies did, and now, there's a lot of back to the office and really a mixed environment. But many companies struggle to measure the impact of these of any team building activities and
Right.
initiatives. So can you walk me through your methodology for tracking and demonstrating the tangible ROI, through these events, particularly for remote teams?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I agree with you. Many companies do struggle to measure the true impact of their team building initiatives. And on one side, I could argue that it's not always that necessary, right? Like,
Hmm.
you usually, I like to compare a lot of business stuff to our personal world. So, you don't measure every date that you go to with your significant other and have a whole like dashboard and chart of, your improvement metrics. But I do think that you can often feel energetically, but I do think that it's important to move beyond those like surface level satisfaction metrics towards a more data informed framework. And this hopefully, captures that long-term influence of connection, of culture, and its impact on performance, particularly with like these enterprise partnerships, because business isn't like our personal lives. There needs to be an ROI on pretty much everything. Um, and today, our measurement approach really combines like these dashboard metrics that we
Okay.
follow, with a manual analysis as well. So, like, we're taking the satisfaction engagement scores of individual experiences. And then with companies that are part of our company plan, we utilize their other existing engagement metrics and platforms that they already are measuring and have, and seeing, what is correlation, what is causation,
Okay.
and really guiding them through that. But there's like three key metrics that I will point out, and then maybe I'll be quiet. But NPS is very classic, right? We're
Right.
automatically collecting this through our customer dashboards. I love our NPS because it's triggering to the participant right at the end of the event. So there's a very high engagement rate when it comes to getting that information. A lot of companies only send their satisfaction scores if they send it a couple days after the event, or it's via email. It's not during the event itself. And then another key metric that we talk about is like engagement velocity, which is kind of what I talked about earlier, which is that manual tracking of seeing, okay, we've done an event, or this team has done an event, what's their engagement score, and what's their engagement score tracking moving forward for the ones who are doing an event versus not doing an event versus doing events consistently.
Okay.
And then a big metric that we're moving towards is productivity scores, and this is part of our larger engagement suite offering. So what we're developing is the ability to really capitalize, actually more analyze is the right word, how meeting effectiveness evolves over time, and measuring like the overall efficiency, participation, collaboration of every little micro moment that we're having, right? Where maybe, you're going to have a meeting after this with some of your direct reports. Everybody should say, hey, how was that meeting good? Was that efficient? Did we spend it wisely? Like, did we have
Yeah.
is this like an energy building meeting? Was it an energy draining meeting? And combining these qualitative and quantitative feedback systems, I think is really going to help us see the bigger ROI that culture is making.
Right. Okay. And so you're working, so it sounds like you're partnering with some of the larger, kind of cultural uh, systems, right? And those the way that people already measure culture within the organization. So it doesn't require something new to come out
Correct.
through Confetti. Got it.
Yep. All of companies on our company plan, they get a dedicated customer success manager, and this is one of their responsibilities. As long as you're willing to give us access to viewing the data, we can then
Right.
start analyzing it on behalf of you guys.
Okay. And do you have some anecdotes? You talked right there about sort of the metrics and the facts and figures about it, but do you have some anecdotes that you could share around, where teams have, kind of felt something different afterward?
Yeah, so you're saying like, are any stories that show that these impacts like actually that these activities actually have some kind of form of
Correct.
impact for a team?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we just released a case study from Rock County. It's a government organization, has
Mhm.
1,400 employees across 29 departments. And before Confetti, they already had like a wellness program. It was things like lunch and learns and like quarterly health challenges and like plenty of other really amazing perks. But what happened is that they were really largely siloed, and it demanded like a heavy coordination from HR. Um, when we were brought into the mix, that's when things really started to change from them. So what began as really wellness centered events gradually became a vehicle for just like a broader engagement and connection initiative.
Okay.
They saw participation rising very quickly. Sessions started to fill up fast. Employees began reaching out after events with different stories of how they kept doing the activities at home.
Okay.
And all of this is like, small indicators of just engagement, right? As I said, it's not always just these big things, but it's these micro moments, these micro data elements that start building on progress. And then in certain departments, even where they were initially hesitant, we often started with the managers, and then once a few managers and leaders were engaged, we saw that other teams started to follow, and there was like a little bit of that kind of FOMO effect.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been that's just like one example, but there's a lot of little stories to share like that.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And you'd mentioned, this being part of a series of activities around engagement, right, including professional development and the like. And there can sometimes be a perception that team events, whether, like this one or just a picnic or something like that, or just playtime rather than strategic investments.
Yeah.
So how do you design experiences that balance, the enjoyment, with clear professional development outcomes? and what strategies have been most successful in shifting the perception on that?
Yeah. So it's a good question, and it's one that I'll say is kind of broken down into a couple different answers. So
Okay.
first of all, like I don't think that there's anything shameful of saying some of our experiences are just again
Yeah,
purely fun, right? Like
right.
getting the team to be like, we're not working here on another skill set. We're not here to discuss another important topic. Like we're here to just crack some jokes and make some laughs.
Right.
And that we've seen actually has the most powerful effects on culture is really just like there isn't any ulterior motives here. We're just looking to have fun. Um, but when it comes to some of our other experiences, and each one is very different, like we have certain things that are what we call like follow alongs that are still
Okay.
fun, right? But you're learning something. It could be like you're learning how to fold origami, or you're learning like a cooking class. Then you have things that are a bit more hands-on professional development. These are courses or workshops, conversations that are very interactive, but have a bit more of an L&D professional development component. And then with our engagement suite, we have lots of different toolkits that play into the L&D elements. Some of it is kind of like Kahoot style
Okay.
opportunities where L&D teams can just create a very fun interface for their own education. Others are workshops that are built by engagement professionals. And so a lot of our workshops start with a quick icebreaker that's pertaining to that topic. And then it's very highly interactive. So when we're teaching people about a topic, there's usually some kind of group exercise, group discussion, and it's done in a very like hands-on, interactive, voting, imagery, session to really ensure we're capturing people's attention fully, because especially in a virtual world where all of us have access to phones and computers, we're so tempted to just like, look at what somebody else is sending us on Slack.
Right.
So it's so important for us that we, create a fully immersive environment and get people to be really in whatever it is that we're trying to teach.
Right. Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Lee. Well, anything else to add? I appreciate the time here. It's been great hearing about this, and it's really interesting tools. We've used them ourselves, and it's yeah, we're excited to hear more about it.
Yeah, likewise. No, I don't think I have too much to add. Maybe the only thing is I know we've been just like the HR world has I feel like has evolved so much over the last few years with COVID being like a very major catalyst. Like HR was, I think, for a long time not seen so much as a strategic player around the table, but then COVID really changed that and
Right.
put them, in the C-suite as a pillar of leadership as equally to, the CFO and the chief legal officer and all the other
Right.
C-suiters. And my only hope is that there's a lot of resources that we're doing at Confetti to empower companies to have the culture that they want, and that budget shouldn't be as much of a factor. So my only touch point is, regardless of what your budget is, would love to help the companies out there make sure that culture is something that's they can continue to invest in. And yeah, that's it.
Well, that's great. Well, again, yeah, thanks, Lee. That's really true. HR has really had to, in a lot of cases, it was already at that table, but yeah, and many more, and even in some of the, the most sophisticated HR teams around, they've had to adjust and readjust, particularly over the last 5 or 6 years, as we've gone through so many different things in the workplace. So, but again, yeah, thank you for your time. This is an amazing tool, and yeah, look forward to hearing more about it in the future.
Awesome. Likewise,
Great.
thanks for
Okay.
having me again.
Great. Thanks, Lee.